a difference is it to lead in line he didn't play last time?
Yeah, I think, look, he's helped them a bunch. I mean, number one, he's an extremely smart player, and he's played in countless postseason games. So clearly you want your starters healthy and ready to play, and I'm sure that's the case with him.
Sean, in a small amount of time, when you're talking about 4th and 1, 4th and 2, what goes into that decision making of we will here, we won't here?
Where you're at in the game, field position. How's the game, going? There's a handful of things relative to a decision like that, where you're at on the field, and then what type of game you feel like you're in. That can vary. And sometimes, we spend a lot of time with the numbers, and yet, sometimes it's your gut as well.
So would you say you're more of a chicken and andouille or seafood gumbo kind of guy?
Next question.
Sean, what do you feel like?
I don't like seafood. I know where you're going.
Sean, what do you feel like is the explanation for the offensive trend in the game over the last 4 or 5 years? Top teams in the league being a lot of times some of the best offenses.
Well, listen, I think the teams are playing good offense and good defense. I mean, what makes a good team? It's not just one side of the ball or the other, and obviously you have to have good quarterback play. I think we talked about defending the run. It's hard to get to where we're at now, being one-dimensional or just. And I think when you look at the teams right now that are playing, what Kansas City did to Indianapolis last week defensively was real impressive. I mean, considering what we had seen from Indianapolis offensively, and so. To your point, though, relative to scoring, I mean that's the objective, and so you have explosive players in this postseason, guys that are extremely talented, guys that are represented on the Pro Bowl, the All-Pro team, whether it's at running back, quarterback, receiver, tight end, but the same thing I would say on defense, and I think that generally when the season's over with, the best team wins, and that's not just in one area.
Sean, you were evaluated a team already once. How much self-scout do you do this week? Do you do more than normal, or just?
Yeah, well, look, the bye gave us a good chance to self-scout. In other words, look closely at, in fact, a lot of self-scout. That's the benefit of that week. That week that you're not playing. Playing a team again in the postseason. I think I said this last week. It's pretty common. It feels like, it was a long time ago from a standpoint of when we played them last. But, at this stage of the season, you have 16 regular season games. You have last week's postseason game. And in some cases, you can go back to last year even. The staffs were similar. We played them, in Los Angeles. And so all the film's there at your disposal to do what you want with it, and now it's trying to manage that, put it together, and put together the best plan offensively, defensively, in the kicking game, just like they're doing right now.
Sean, you said you heard that well, Coach?
Well, you try not to. You try to really look closely at what are the things that you feel like fit, and making sure there's not too much. Guys are playing fast and they know what to do.
Sean, you said you heard Marcus Peters' comments. Any comment on that?
No, listen, he's someone that we grew real close to in the evaluation process. He's from the Bay Area. I used to recruit, that area where he went to high school, and he's someone that we came close to drafting him. The year we took Andrus. One of our goals going into that draft was Pete and Peters, and that's the truth. So I have great respect for him, and it was all good.
You said you didn't like seafood. Do you like gumbo?
I'm okay with it. I mean, it's just I'm more of a Midwestern, like steak and potato guy.
Was there something about his matchup with Thomas that y'all liked?
No, we got a lot of man in that game, and honestly, a lot more man maybe than even expected. We've seen more zone in the last 5 or 6 weeks from these guys on defense. Wade does a great job. He'll mix things up. He'll give you a 4-man rush. He'll give you a 5-man rush. So very quickly as the game unfolds, you got to begin to pay attention to how you think you're getting defensed. And the same thing kind of relative to the Eagles last week. From the prior game, there was a certain plan. That's not uncommon. For the second time around, each side of the ball with both teams to look at new wrinkles, and the key is quickly seeing it and then making the adjustments.
Sean, as an offensive guy, what are some of the things that stand out when you watch them on offense?
Man, they're precise. Their tempo. They give you a lot of things that the very, very beginning. And Sean cut his teeth under John Gruden. I cut my teeth under John Gruden. Plays that start off looking the same that are different. I remember hearing that 100 times. And Sean's taking his spin on it. They give you a lot of reduced splits, and they get access by doing that. It's harder to press some of those guys. They're very precise in what they're doing. They're outstanding in the run game. Aaron Cromer is a close friend of mine. He's their line coach. He was here. So they're talented and extremely well coached.
Sean, you guys auditioned so many different running backs in that sort of number 2 role during the first 4 weeks. What is it about marketing that made him so difficult to replace?
Well, it's a good question. I think we had a handful of players for those first 4 games, and then inevitably all these games are important, right? I mean, week 2 is important, as important as week 15, and so we had to be careful, and I don't know how well we did, but we had to be careful not to use Alvin too much, and so we had to have that balance. But Mark's been someone who's extremely familiar with what we do in the third down, in the nickel, in the base. There's not one thing I'm looking at this call sheet where I'm saying, that ability to use either back is extremely beneficial and much easier on you when you're calling plays. But when it's got to be specific and all of a sudden, let's say you lose one of the backs for 10 minutes, or then it just forces you to be a little bit more one-dimensional.
What do you admire about the